three houses were built about 1936 to replace smaller ones, as there were three lightkeepers who worked in shifts and usually had their family with them. Charlie Arnold, with his wife, son and daughter, Harry Smith, who was alone, and Joe Carter, his wife, three sons and four daughters, were the residents when these were taken. Although the older children were away at school most of the time, my brother Pat, aged 3, and myself, aged 5, spent almost 2 years on the island. Duties of the lightkeepers included maintaining buildings and equipment in good condition, which meant painting and repairs whenever necessary. So those fellows had to be general handymen and jack of all trades. The houses have gone through changes over the years, with different windows. Vents have been added to the centre of the roofs for better air circulation, and 240-volt electrical appliances and gas have replaced kerosene stoves and lanterns. Here the men are erecting the aerial after maintenance. Wireless reception was not always the best due to static and interference. This was greatly improved with an idea of Charlie Arnold. It was what they called a grid aerial, placed on the roof of the radio shack, and when reception was bad they threw a switch and changed from the rhombic aerial to this one. Morse was also used a lot, and weather reports were sent every 3 hours. We move on in time now to 1963, and these colour slides were taken by Ellie Durbridge when she spent a couple of weeks on the island. In these you can see there was not much change in 20 years. There are two reasons for the lack of vegetation at this time. The first was a lease to mine guano in the middle 1800s, so the island was literally turned inside out. The second was the goats. First put there in case anyone was stranded, they were handy for fresh milk and meat, but also ate anything within their reach. The Pisonias at the far side were affected by the goats, as leaves only remained on the top half. They also drank seawater when no fresh was available, and it never did them any harm. As the island is only about 7 foot above high tide and has a large area of reef around it, the obvious danger to shipping was removed by the lighthouse. The first light was a type of lantern hoisted to the top of a long pole in 1866, but a cyclone soon knocked that idea over, so the present tower was planned and assembled here in 1873 after being built in England and shipped out in pieces. The amphibious vehicle here, known as a duck, was on the lighthouse vessel for landing heavy stores and drums of fuel for the generator, which is in the shed behind it. I don't know how long the present generator has been there, but the shed was built in 1944 to house a much smaller one that was only used to charge batteries for the radio. We move over to the back of the island, and this was the biggest clump of personias, and the direction of the strongest wind can be seen by the way they lean. Behind there is known as the lagoon, which is protected by the reef about a quarter of a mile out. When the tide is high, this area has about 4 foot of fairly calm water and is great for swimming. This end of these trees is all that remains now, but it is very different to this. The following scene was taken in 1981 from the other side looking this way. I put it in here to show the contrast. There it is, a great difference to how it used to be. We now go back to 1963 for a while. This smaller clump of personias was further around towards the lighthouse, and there is only one tree remaining of them now. I'll show that a little later in the live presentation. One of the goats, which were usually numbered around 100. Before we came they were all white, but the girls brought some coloured ones as pets from another lighthouse, and we can see in those 20 years the coloured strain was carried on. The little group here would be the lightkeepers of 1963 with their family and friends, obviously lined up to have their photo taken. Landing craft again. It seems to be about to leave for the ship, loaded with drums and a few too many crew. The shovels leaning against the side were probably needed to dig it out of loose coral. The following colour slides were loaned to me by Mr. Lou Dixon, who has the enviable job of maintaining lights all along the Queensland coast. Now later in the 1960s, the occasion is the replacing of the old corrugated iron tanks with the round fiberglass ones of 5,000 gallon capacity. The Lark in the right side of the picture is now on the Cape Morton in place of the smaller landing craft seen earlier. The first house is now used as a radio room and office. The old radio shack is in the bottom right corner, now just a work shed. This scene was taken from the balcony of the lighthouse. These scenes are to show the changes that have occurred since 1969, when a tourist lease was granted on part of the island. The goats were removed and a tree planting operation began. I've been told that some topsoil was brought from the mainland to help things grow. Here is an aerial view taken from the stores plane, and the airstrip can be seen in the middle of the picture. Lady Elliot Island is 60 miles off the coast from Bundaberg and is the first in a long chain which lie along the Great Barrier Reef. The green roofs of the houses are almost hidden among trees. As the tide is out, the reef can be seen to extend well out on the ocean side, and it was there that the Apollo was wrecked in the Brisbane to Gladstone yacht race of 1980. This scene of the lighthouse was taken in the late 70s. As the trees are so big, the house is almost hidden by them. The flagpole is not there now, and flags are flown from a small pole near the top of the lighthouse. The scaffolding around the top is from when the light was changed from a manned station to a fully automatic light in 1981. The annex at the base was not in early pictures and was built when the area in the bottom of the tower was used as an office and radio room for a while. The lighthouse by night is quite an impressive sight, and the light was captured as it swept around. This was taken close to the base and makes it appear very long and thin. This light was installed on top of the tower while the old system was being replaced. It's been left there in case of a breakdown and can be turned on until the main one is repaired. The Cape Morton lies at anchor just to the right of the light, but cannot be easily recognised. The reef in the sunlight from high above is a beautiful sight, and tourists who come here in ever-increasing numbers explore it with snorkels and scuba gear. A glass-bottom boat is also available for those less adventurous. Here is the old light, which was a kerosene mantle type and needed regular attention. It was replaced with an acetylene gas mantle and is now a fully automatic light. The character of the original light has been retained by keeping this section. A store's day of the past, they used to bring them to the shore in the aluminium boat, then up to the houses by wheelbarrow. Light stores are now flown over once a fortnight. The little cabin was the first in the tourist area in the barren days. The same cabin as it is now is the centre of activity, which includes a block of units and about 50 continental type tents among the trees. The following is live action taken on the 5th of June 1982. I've set the camera near the centre of the island and will now sweep around to the left, starting at the lighthouse and back to it again. My helper Jacqueline appears briefly, then gets away quick when she realises the camera was on her. The aircraft we came in for the day, it's a 10-seat, twin-engine Britain Islander operated by Barrier Reef Airways. This area in the summertime is usually filled with birds. It's the nesting ground for terns, and they fly around in circles when disturbed. Looking along the airstrip to the west, or the mainland direction, back to where we began. The houses are hidden among the trees to the right of the lighthouse. Here's the only Personia left of those behind the lighthouse. Earlier, there was a third clump in the old days, but there's no sign of that now. Two graves are in that little yard from early inhabitants. The fence is always well kept, but the headstones could use some attention. The earliest is from the mid-1890s, and the other one is from 1907. We'll have a look at one of the houses. This is number 3, or the furthest from the lighthouse, and they don't look like the same ones as in the early pictures. The old boat shed is neglected because it's to be demolished. I'd like to see it preserved and used as a museum, because a lot of visitors would be interested in the history of this little island. The beach in front of the houses has some soft sand, but it's mostly sharp coral. Good sand shoes are advised to be worn in this area. The water is always lovely and clear, and very inviting on a hot day. Rails leading to the boat shed disappear under coral built up over the years since they were last used. This area between the boat shed and the houses up with water in the wet season, so a raised path of coral was made leading to each house. There's one in the picture now. Small coconut tree is in the place, almost the same place where the old one used to be. There's another raised path to another house, overgrown with grass. It's hard to imagine that this area was just bare black coral around 40 years ago. What's left of the old flagpole. Daughter Jacqueline stands in front of house number 1, a little weary from walking. This area was seen in the colour slides. There's the generator room with the acetylene gas shed built in brick on the front of it. The emergency electric light on top of the tower. The very old radio shack, which is only a work shed. There's the wind gauge to the right, the radio aerial in the middle. We get a quick glimpse of the rain gauge coming into the left corner of the picture. Line of diesel drums for the generator. That's the crosshair strip behind the houses. The round tanks and the backs of the houses can just be seen through thick trees behind them. One of the few Norfolk pine trees moving through the picture. They don't grow real well here. Here's a strange site for this area. Above ground swimming pool used for water from the well, which is brackish and only good for washing. Rainwater must be caught for drinking purposes. Jacqueline heading back for a T-bone steak and salad lunch. some of the continental tents in the edge of the trees. Most of them are in the trees behind there. We now take a ride in the glass bottom boat. All those people and myself in that aluminium boat there. Lady Elliot Island has an area of about 110 acres and is all coral in varying degrees of decay. We move fairly fast over the coral from this camera angle, but it gives a good indication of the beauty of the reef. Here's a bit of tourist information while watching this. Flights leave Brisbane every day except Mondays and follow the coastline at about 3,000 feet all the way to Maryborough or Bundaberg, which is a great scenic trip by itself. Flying time is a bit over 90 minutes, and Barrier Reef Airways run a day tour, weekend safaris, or holidays of 1, 2 or more weeks with a stay in those comfortable tents or beachfront units, which we'll get a quick look at later. Back on dry land again. I hope that trip didn't make anybody seasick. There's an old relic rusting away. Many times the lifeboat was hauled out of the water with that. Along there is the scuba shop, with the experts awaiting to show the underwater world the way the fish see it. There's the way a lightkeeper sometimes spends his day off, with a good book. There's the holiday units on the beachfront. We'll have a look at the lagoon now. It extends from the left-hand point there, right along across the back of the island. The tide is very low at the moment. Moving up the beach from the lagoon, once more to the holiday units, right on the beachfront there. Our trip is over all too soon, and we must depart for home. The staff wave as we leave. Taxi down to the far end of the airstrip, turn around, and very soon we're airborne. Past the tents, out over the lagoon. Over the line of breakers at the edge of the reef, and to the blue water beyond. This painting by Joe Carter, an old lightkeeper, painted in 1969 from memory of what it was like in 1943 when he was there. I hope you've enjoyed our little trip and can understand why I call this island a beautiful gem of the Great Barrier Reef.